The iron bell of House Thornhelm rang 3 times before dawn, and every child in the fortress knew what that meant. Someone would die before sunrise. Cal pressed his palm against the cold stone wall of the armory, listening to his father's voice echo through the corridor. Lord Varon Thornhelm never raised his voice, yet somehow his whispers carried the weight of falling mountains. "The boy is 12 summers old. He is ready." "Ready to die, you mean?" That was his mother, Lady Sareth, her tones sharp as broken glass. "You'll send our only son to the flame trials like you sent his brother." His brother was weak. Kyle is different. Cale's jaw tightened. Torrin hadn't been weak. Torrin had been kind, and kindness was the only weakness Dune-Kar refused to forgive. 3 years ago, his brother had entered the trials as House Thornhelm's champion. They'd brought him back in pieces, wrapped in scorched cloth that still smelled of burning flesh. A hand gripped Cale's shoulder. He spun, fist raised, but stopped when he saw Mira. His cousin stood there in her training leathers, her dark eyes reflecting the torchlight like polished obsidian. "Eavesdropping again?" "Learning," Cal corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Mira leaned against the wall beside him, arms crossed. "Because listening to your father plan your death sounds more like torture than education." Before Cale could respond, the armory door burst open. Lord Varon emerged, his black cloak trailing behind him like smoke. His eyes found Cale immediately, cold and measuring. "Walk with me." It wasn't a request. They moved through the fortress in silence, past sleeping guards and flickering braziers, until they reached the Forge Temple. The sacred fires burned eternal here, fed by the bones of defeated enemies and the weapons of fallen champions. The heat struck Cale's face like a physical blow, but his father walked forward without hesitation. "Do you know why House Thornhelm has ruled Dune-Kar for 300 years? Lord Varon asked, not turning around. "Because we're the strongest." "Wrong." His father stopped before the central forge, where the ancestral blade Shadowbane hung suspended in chains above the flames. "We rule because we understand sacrifice. Every generation we feed the fire. We give it our sons, our daughters, our blood, and in return it remembers us." Cal stared at the sword. Legend said it had been forged from the spine of the first god who dared to defy the flame. Its edge had never dulled in 3 centuries. "Tomorrow the trials begin," his father continued. 9 kingdoms, 9 champions. Only one flame stays lit. He finally turned, and Cal saw something unexpected in those iron-gray eyes. Not cruelty, but inevitability. "You will carry our house into that arena. You will fight. You will kill. Or you will die. And we will find another son to take your place." The words should have terrified him. Instead, Cal felt something else rising in his chest. A cold, quiet rage that tasted like ash. "And if I refuse?" The slap came so fast, Cal didn't see it. He hit the ground hard, blood filling his mouth. When he looked up, his father loomed over him like a statue carved from midnight. "Refusal is death. Cowardice is death. The only choice you have, boy, is how you meet the fire." Lord Varon turned away. "You leave at first light. Mira will accompany you as your second. Pack light. The trials don't care about comfort." Cal remained on the ground long after his father's footsteps faded. The forge fires crackled and hissed, hungry for fuel. Somewhere in the fortress, his mother wept. Somewhere beyond the walls, 8 other champions were preparing for the same fate. But Cale wasn't thinking about the trials. He was thinking about the Iron Bell and the prophecy his grandmother had whispered before she died. When the 9th flame falls, the Wanderer rises, and every throne will burn. He touched his bleeding lip and smiled. The Wanderer was coming, and he would burn them all. The journey to Iroth took 6 days through mountain passes where the wind carried voices of the dead. Kyle rode in silence, his cousin Mira beside him, while their escort of 4 Thornhelm guards kept watch for bandits and worse things that hunted these roads. On the 7th morning, they crested the final ridge, and Cale saw the Arena of 9 Flames for the first time. It rose from the valley like a colossus of white stone and black iron, 9 towers circling a central pit where the sacred fires burned. Each tower flew the banner of a competing kingdom: the golden quill of Iroth, the burning sword of Zandora, the wolf skull of Nalcora. Thousands of spectators already filled the stone galleries, their voices creating a roar like distant thunder. Impressive, isn't it? Mira said softly. 3,000 years old, and it's never missed a trial. How many champions have died here? All of them eventually. She glanced at him. The trials don't end after one victory, cousin. Win this, and you'll fight again in 10 years. And again, until someone better comes along. They descended into chaos. The lower city surrounding the arena teemed with merchants hawking weapons and charms, priests offering blessings for gold, and pickpockets working the crowds. Kyle saw warriors from every kingdom, Zandoran fighters with ritual scars covering their arms, Nal Karan beast riders accompanied by dire wolves the size of horses, a Cerethian priestess whose eyes had been replaced with silver coins. A guard in Iroth's colors stopped them at the arena gates. Names and kingdom. Kyle of House Thornhelm, Dunkar. This is my second. The guard consulted a scroll, made a mark, then gestured them through. Champion quarters are in the East Tower. First round begins at midday. Don't be late. They start without you and declare your kingdom forfeit. The champion quarters were sparse. A stone cell with a sleeping pallet, a basin of water, and a window overlooking the pit. Kyle could see the 9 flames burning below, each one a different color. Dunkar's flame burned black as midnight, fed by iron shavings and coal. Mira set down their packs. You should rest. I can't. Then sharpen your blade. Check your armor. Do something other than stare at that pit like it's your grave. Maybe it is. She grabbed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. Listen to me, Kale. Your father is a bastard and your brother was unprepared, but you're neither of those things. I've watched you train since you could hold a sword. You're fast, you're smart, and you're angry enough to do what needs doing. She released him. Use that anger. Let it burn hotter than their flames. A horn blast echoed through the arena, 3 long notes that silenced the crowd. First round, Mira whispered. They made their way to the preparation chamber beneath the pit. 8 other champions waited there, each with their second. Kel recognized some from the banners and descriptions. A massive Morathian warrior covered in frost tattoos, a Zandoran woman whose hands were wrapped in fire-scorched leather, a boy from Thalmora who couldn't have been older than 10. The boy caught Cal staring and smiled. His teeth had been filed to points. An Iroth official entered, flanked by guards. He was ancient, his face more wrinkles than skin, but his voice carried power. Champions of the 9 kingdoms, hear the rules. 9 enter, 1 leaves. No weapons but what you claim inside the pit. No mercy but what your opponent grants. Victory goes to the last standing. He paused. The flame that dies first will see its kingdom suffer 3 years of darkness. Choose your actions carefully. The floor beneath them began to descend, a massive platform lowering them into the pit. Sunlight gave way to firelight. The roar of the crowd became deafening. Kyle's heart hammered against his ribs. Around the edge of the pit, weapon racks offered choices: swords, spears, axes, chains. In the center, the 9 flames burned on raised pedestals, each one protected by a circle of runes. The platform locked into place with a thunderous clang. Begin! Chaos erupted. The Morathian warrior charged the Zandoran woman, their collision shaking the ground. The boy from Thalmora darted for the weapons, moving like a viper. A Nalkaran champion called out in a guttural tongue, and somewhere above, a dire wolf howled in response. Cal ran for the nearest weapon rack, but someone was faster. The Cerethian priestess appeared before him, as if materializing from smoke, a curved blade already in her hand. Those silver coin eyes reflected nothing as she struck. He rolled left, her blade sparking against stone where his head had been. His hand found a short sword, and he came up swinging. She blocked, twisted, and suddenly her blade was at his throat. Your flame dies first, Thornhelm, she whispered. I have seen it. Then her head separated from her shoulders in a spray of crimson. Behind her stood Mira, holding a throwing axe, her face splattered with blood. No visions today, witch. Kyle stared at his cousin in shock. You're not supposed to interfere. The rules. There are no rules once the platform descends. She grabbed a second axe. "Now move!" A scream cut through the arena. Kyle turned and saw the boy from Thalmora standing over the Morathian warrior's body, his small hands dripping red. That filed-toothed smile was wider now. The boy's eyes found Kyle, and then he started running. The boy moved like wind through tall grass, impossible to track, impossible to predict. Kyle barely had time to raise his sword before the child was upon him, a jagged dagger aimed at his throat. Steel met steel. The impact sent vibrations up Kyle's arm. The boy was small, but he fought with the strength of something inhuman. Up close, Cal could see his eyes, completely black, no white, no iris, just endless dark that seemed to swallow light. "Pretty Thornhelm boy," the child whispered, his voice layered with something else beneath it, something older. "Your brother screamed beautifully. Will you scream too?" Rage exploded in Cal's chest. This thing had killed Torin. He drove his knee into the boy's stomach, sending him stumbling back. Before the child could recover, Kale swung his blade in a wide arc. The boy twisted impossibly, his spine bending at angles that should have broken bone, and the sword passed harmlessly through empty air. "Too slow," the boy laughed. Around them, the battle raged. The Nalcaran champion had mounted one of the weapon racks like a perch, hurling spears with deadly accuracy. An Arendor fighter danced between flames, his movements fluid as water. Two champions from kingdoms Kale didn't recognize grappled near the edge of the pit, each trying to throw the other into the runes that protected the flames. Mira appeared at Kale's side, both axes ready. "What is that thing?" "Not a child," Kyle panted. "Something worse." The boy's head tilted, studying them like a curious bird studies insects. "The girl smells like betrayal. Deep, old betrayal. Blood that should never have mixed." His black eyes fixed on Mira. "Does your cousin know, little crow? Does he know what you really are?" Mira's face went pale. "Shut your mouth, demon." "Demon?" The boy's laughter echoed unnaturally. "I am no demon. I am consequence. I am the price your kingdoms paid when they broke the first oath." He raised his dagger, and the blade began to smoke. "I am the child of Thalmora's ambition, born in shadow, fed on secrets, and I have been waiting 12 years to feast on Thornhelm blood." He lunged. This time Mira was ready. Her first axe caught his dagger, redirecting the strike. Her second axe came down hard, aiming for his neck. But the boy dissolved into smoke, reforming 3 paces away, his filed teeth gleaming in the firelight. "Clever crow," he said, "but cleverness won't save you when the flames go dark." A horn blast suddenly cut through the chaos. Kale turned and saw something that stopped his heart. Dunkar's black flame was guttering, shrinking, its light dimming while the other 8 burned strong. "No," Kale whispered. The Erath official's voice boomed across the arena. "First flame weakens. Dunkar falls to darkness." The crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers and gasps. In the Thornhelm Tower, Kyle could see his father standing rigid as iron, his face unreadable even from this distance. "How?" Mira grabbed Kale's arm. "We're both still alive. The flame shouldn't weaken unless the champion dies." The boy's laughter answered her question. "Unless someone feeds it poison instead of sacrifice." He held up his smoking dagger. "This blade was quenched in the blood of your brother, Thornhelm. Every drop of your family's blood it tastes makes your flame hunger for more. And when it starves," he smiled, "your kingdom sleeps in darkness for 3 long years." Kale's mind raced. If the flame died completely, Dunkar would be declared forfeit. His father would be executed for failing to protect their kingdom's light. His mother, his people, everyone would suffer. "There's a way to stop it," the boy said, as if reading his thoughts. "Feed the flame something it wants more than blood. Feed it a life willingly given." His black eyes sparkled with malice. "Feed it your second." Mira's grip on her axes tightened. "Don't listen to him, Kyle. He's trying to divide us." "Am I?" The boy circled them slowly. "Or am I offering the only path to victory? One life to save thousands. Your cousin's breath to keep your kingdom's flame burning. Isn't that what your father taught you? Sacrifice is the price of power." Around them, the other champions had paused, sensing the drama unfolding. The Nalkaran warrior watched from his perch, curious. The Arendor fighter stood between two flames, waiting to see what would happen. Cal looked at the black flame, now barely larger than a candle. He looked at Mira, her face set in grim determination. He looked at the boy, that ancient thing wearing a child's skin, and he made his choice. You want Thornhelm blood? Cal raised his sword. Then take mine. He drove the blade into his own palm, blood welling instantly. Before Mira could stop him, before the boy could react, Cal ran toward Dunkar's dying flame. The runes protecting it burned his skin as he crossed them, but he didn't stop. He thrust his bleeding hand into the black fire. Pain like nothing he'd ever known consumed him. The flame drank greedily, swelling, growing, turning from black to deep crimson as it fed on his offered blood. The fire climbed up his arm, scorching flesh, but Cal held steady. The arena fell silent. Then the flame exploded outward, a pillar of dark red fire that shot toward the sky. The other 8 flames dimmed in response, as if recognizing a new predator among them. When the light faded, Cal remained standing, his arm blackened and smoking, his eyes now reflecting the same crimson as the reborn flame. The boy took a step backward, and for the first time Cal saw fear in those black eyes. Impossible, the child whispered. No one survives the flame's hunger. Cal's voice came out different, layered with echoes of fire and ash. I didn't survive it. I became it. He moved. The boy tried to dissolve into smoke, but Cal's burning hand caught him by the throat, holding him solid. The child screamed, a sound that held centuries of trapped rage and pain. This is for Torin, Cal said quietly. Then he fed the boy to the flame. The screaming lasted exactly 7 seconds. When it ended, only ash remained, drifting down like black snow. The crimson flame pulsed once, satisfied, then returned to its pedestal, burning steady and strong. The horn blast came again. First blood to Dunkar. 7 champions remain. Mira ran to him, her face a mixture of horror and awe. Kyle, your arm, we need to... I'm fine. And strangely, he was. The burned flesh didn't hurt anymore. Instead, he felt power coursing through him, hot and ancient and hungry. But something's wrong, Mira. The flame, it's still inside me. I can feel it burning. Before she could respond, the platform beneath them shuddered. The remaining 7 champions turned as one toward the center of the pit, where all 9 flames suddenly blazed in unison. The ancient Iroth official's voice cracked with urgency. The flames have spoken. The trials continue, but the rules have changed. Something has awakened that should have stayed sleeping. From deep beneath the arena, something roared, and the stones began to crack. The cracks spread like black lightning across the arena floor, each fracture releasing steam that smelled of sulfur and rotting meat. The crowd's cheers turned to screams as the stone galleries began to shake. Spectators trampled each other, rushing for the exits. Cal tried to move toward Mira, but his legs wouldn't obey. The crimson flame inside him pulsed with each heartbeat, and he could feel it pulling him toward the center of the pit, toward the widening cracks, toward whatever was clawing its way up from below. Kyle! Mira grabbed his shoulder, trying to pull him back. We need to get out of here. I can't. His voice still carried that layered echo. The flame wants me to stay. It wants me to see. The remaining 6 champions had scattered to the edges of the pit. The Nalkaran warrior abandoned his perch and sprinted for the ascending platform, but it wouldn't move. The mechanism had locked. They were all trapped. A massive section of floor collapsed inward, revealing a chasm that descended into absolute darkness. The 9 flames leaned toward it like flowers seeking sun, their light swallowed by whatever waited below. Then a hand emerged from the darkness. It was gray as old bone, easily the size of a grown man, with fingers that ended in black talons. The hand gripped the edge of the chasm, and slowly, impossibly, something began to pull itself up. The ancient Iroth official stood frozen in his observation box, his wrinkled face slack with terror. Impossible, he whispered, but the arena's acoustics carried his voice to everyone. The bone serpent was sealed. The 9 kingdoms swore the oath. It cannot be free. What is that thing? Mira breathed. Kale knew. Somehow the flame inside him carried the memory. It's not a serpent. That was a lie told to make children sleep easier. His crimson eyes never left the emerging creature. It's a god. The first god. The one the kingdoms murdered to steal the flames. The thing pulled itself fully into the arena, and Kale understood why they had called it a serpent. Its body was long and sinuous, covered in scales made from thousands of human bones fused together. But it had arms, powerful limbs that ended in those terrible talons, and a head that was almost human except for the size and the fact that its face was a mask of cracked skulls melted into one another. Where its eyes should have been, empty sockets burned with the same 9 colors as the sacred flames. "You dare," it spoke, its voice like continents grinding together. "You dare feed on my stolen essence. You dare burn with fire cut from my heart." The Arendor champion screamed and ran. He made it 3 steps before the god's hand shot out, faster than anything that large should move, and crushed him like rotten fruit. The Arendor flame guttered and died instantly. 8 kingdoms remain, the creature said, almost conversational now. Its skull face turned toward each flame in turn. 8 thieves, 8 debts to collect, the burning sockets fixed on Kale. But you, little Thornhelm, you are different. You did not just steal my flame, you swallowed it, made it part of your flesh. Kale's arm burned hotter, the crimson fire spreading up his shoulder now, creeping toward his chest. He could feel the god's attention on him like physical weight, crushing him into the stone. "The boy speaks true," Mira said suddenly, stepping between Kyle and the god. Her voice was steady despite the terror in her eyes. "He swallowed the flame to save his kingdom, but I carry a different debt." The god's head tilted, curious. "Speak, little crow." "My mother was of House Cromere, Thalmora." Mira's hands trembled, but she kept them at her sides, axes forgotten. "My father was of House Thornhelm, Dunkar. I am the child of 2 kingdoms, born of a union that violated the ancient laws. My blood is mixed, impure, forbidden." Kyle stared at his cousin in shock. "Mira, what are you?" "The day the trials began 300 years ago," she continued, speaking to the god now, "the 9 kingdoms swore an oath. No bloodlines would mix. Each flame would remain pure. But my parents broke that oath." She met the god's burning gaze. "I am the violation you've been searching for. I am the crack in their precious covenant." The god leaned closer, its breath hot enough to sear skin. "Why do you tell me this, little crack? Why offer yourself when you could run?" "Because I'm tired of hiding what I am." Mira's voice broke. "And because if you want to punish someone for the sins of these kingdoms, punish the sin made flesh, not the boy who tried to save his people." The remaining champions watched in silence. Even the Nalkaran warrior had stopped trying to escape, transfixed by the drama unfolding. The god studied Mira for a long moment. Then it laughed, a sound like mountains crumbling. "You think your mongrel blood matters to me? You think I care about their petty laws?" It straightened to its full height, towering over the arena. "I am the first flame, the source. Before your kingdoms existed, before your ancestors crawled from the mud, I burned. And when they came with their spears and their chains and their hunger, I gave them everything. I gave them fire. I gave them warmth. I gave them the light that built their civilizations." The god's voice rose to a roar. "And they repaid me with murder." All 8 remaining flames exploded simultaneously, pillars of colored fire shooting into the sky. The arena shook so violently that cracks appeared in the tower walls. Kyle fell to his knees, the crimson flame inside him responding to the god's rage, burning so hot he thought his bones would turn to ash. "For 3,000 years I have waited in the dark," the god continued, its voice dropping to something more terrible than shouting. Quiet, patient malice. "Waited for one of you to be foolish enough, desperate enough, hungry enough to feed on my essence directly, to take it inside yourselves?" The skull face turned back to Kale. "And finally you did." Understanding crashed over Kale like ice water. "You wanted this. You wanted someone to swallow the flame." Of course, the god's teeth made from finger bones clicked together in something like a smile. Because now, little Thornhelm, we are bound. Your flesh is my cage. Your blood is my road back into this world. It reached out one massive hand. And when I am done wearing your skin, I will burn every kingdom that thought to make a slave of God. The hand descended toward Kale's head. Mira screamed and threw herself forward, both axes swinging. The blades bit into the god's wrist, barely scratching the bone scales but enough to make it pause. "Run!" she shouted at Kale. "I'll hold it. Just run!" But Kale couldn't run. The crimson flame had spread to his chest now, wrapping around his heart. He could feel the god's presence inside him, ancient and furious and impossibly strong, trying to hollow him out and wear him like a puppet. And yet, there was something else there too, a memory carried in the flame itself. Not the god's memory, but someone else's. A voice old and familiar, whispering words in the dark. His grandmother's voice. "When the ninth flame falls, the wanderer rises." Kale's eyes snapped open, truly open, and he saw past the god's fury to the truth beneath. This thing wasn't trying to possess him. It was trying to die. "You're tired," Kale whispered. The god froze, its hand hovering above Mira's upraised axes. 3,000 years in the dark, Kyle continued, standing now despite the fire consuming him from within. 3,000 years of rage and pain and loneliness. You don't want revenge. He took a step toward the towering creature. You want rest. The burning sockets met his crimson eyes. And I can give it to you. The god's skull face cracked, and something that might have been a tear leaked from one empty socket. "Tell me how," Kyle said. "Tell me how to end this." The creature opened its mouth, and the answer came out in a language older than kingdoms, older than fire, older than the stones beneath their feet. But somehow Kale understood every word, and what he learned made his blood run cold. The god's words settled into Kale's mind like stones dropped into deep water, each one sinking until it touched something fundamental and true. When the creature finished speaking, the arena fell into absolute silence. "No," Mira said, lowering her axes. "Kale, whatever it told you, there has to be another way." "There isn't." Kale's voice was calm now, resigned. The crimson flame had spread across his entire chest, and he could feel it reaching for his heart, hungry to complete its transformation. The 9 kingdoms didn't just murder a god. They tore it into 9 pieces and imprisoned each piece in a flame. Every time we fight these trials, every time we feed the flames with blood and sacrifice, we're just prolonging its agony. The remaining champions had gathered closer now, drawn by morbid curiosity. The Nalkaran warrior spoke, his voice rough. "So what? Let the gods suffer. Our kingdoms need the flames. Without them, we have no power, no heat to forge weapons, no light to grow crops in the dark seasons." "Your kingdoms built themselves on torture," Kale shot back. "You've been feeding off a god's slow death for 3,000 years, and you call it civilization." The god knelt down, bringing its massive skull face level with Kyle. Up close, he could see faces within the fused bone. Dozens of expressions frozen in eternal agony or peace or fury. "The boy understands," it rumbled. "Now tell them what must be done." Kale took a breath. "Someone has to gather all 9 flames. Take them inside themselves like I took Dunkar's flame. Become the vessel for every piece of the god's essence," he paused, "and then walk into the void beneath the arena, sealing it forever. The flames will die. The god will finally rest. And whoever carries them dies," Mira finished, her voice breaking. "You're talking about killing yourself. I'm talking about ending 3,000 years of suffering." Kyle turned to her, and she flinched at what she saw in his crimson eyes. Not fear, but something like relief. "I've felt what the flame carries, Mira. Every scream, every moment of pain, every year trapped in the dark. If I can end that, shouldn't I?" "That's not your burden to bear." "Maybe not." Kyle looked at his blackened arm, watching the crimson fire pulse beneath his skin. "But I'm already carrying one piece, and my father spent my whole life teaching me that sacrifice is the price of power." He smiled bitterly. For once, he was right about something. The ancient Iroth official's voice crackled through the arena, weak and shaking. If the flames die, everything dies with them. Our forges will go cold. Our crops will freeze. Millions will starve before the year ends. Then you'll have to learn to survive without stealing from gods, Kyle replied. He turned to the creature. How do I take the other flames? The god gestured with one massive hand, and the 8 remaining flames lifted from their pedestals, floating through the air like living things. They circled Kyle slowly, each one a different color. Gold for Iroth, crimson for Zandora, green for Nalcora, silver for Varin, violet for Sereth, blue for the drowned Okarn, white for Morath, and orange for Arendor. Open yourself, the god instructed. Let them come home. Kyle spread his arms wide and closed his eyes. The first flame struck his chest like a spear. Gold fire exploded through his veins, carrying memories of 1,000 scholars burning books they deemed too dangerous, knowledge destroyed to maintain power. He screamed. The second flame followed, crimson rage that showed him desert warriors branding captives, children stolen and raised as weapons. His knees buckled. Green came next, forest spirits enslaved to pull plows, ancient trees cut down to build monuments to human vanity. Silver brought the ring of hammers on anvils, but also the cries of slaves worked to death in mountain mines. Violet showed him priestesses communing with the dead, then using that power to curse their enemies, to twist death into a weapon. Blue carried the weight of drowned cities, civilizations swallowed by floods when a Karn angered the wrong spirits. White brought frost and discipline, and the screams of the weak left to die in snow because they could not keep pace with the strong. Orange blazed with beauty and horror intertwined, art created from the bones of conquered people, songs stolen from dying throats. When the 8th flame settled, Cal collapsed. His entire body burned with 9 different colors, each flame competing for space inside his mortal flesh. Blood ran from his nose, his ears, his eyes. His skin cracked like dried earth, light bleeding through the fissures. Kale! Mira tried to reach him, but the heat radiating from his body forced her back. He looked up at her through eyes that now held all 9 flame colors, swirling together. Tell my father, he gasped. Tell him I understand now. Every choice he made, every cruel lesson, every moment he chose duty over love. Tell him I finally understand what it means to be Thornhelm. Don't you dare, Mira sobbed. Don't you dare make this sound noble. You're just a boy. You're just my cousin. You don't have to save anyone. Yes, Kyle said softly. I do. He stood, his body barely holding together, flames writhing beneath his skin like serpents. The god watched him with something that might have been pride or pity or both. One more thing, Cal said to the creature. When I seal the void, when the flames die, what happens to the kingdoms? The god was quiet for a long moment. They will have what they truly earned. Darkness, cold, hunger, struggle. Its skull face tilted. But also possibility. For 3,000 years, they have used my stolen power as a crutch. Perhaps without it, they will finally learn to stand. Kale nodded. He turned to face the chasm at the center of the arena, the void that led down into absolute darkness. Every step toward it felt like walking through fire, because he was fire now, all 9 flames burning in harmony and discord within his failing flesh. Wait. The Nalkoran warrior stepped forward, his fierce face troubled. If you do this, if you take the flames into the dark, what becomes of us? The remaining champions? Kale looked at each of them in turn. The warrior, the Varin blacksmith, the Sarethian who had replaced the dead priestess, the Jornveld poet, the others. You go home, he said simply. You tell them what happened here. You tell them the age of stolen fire is over. What comes next is up to them. He reached the edge of the chasm. The void below seemed to pulse with anticipation, ancient and hungry. Mira's voice cut through the roaring in his ears. Kyle, please, there has to be another way. He turned to look at her one last time. His cousin, his friend, the only person in House Thornhelm who had ever treated him like he mattered. Tell my mother I'm sorry. Tell her Torn's death wasn't her fault, and neither is mine. Kyle? And Mira? He smiled, and for just a moment, the flames dimmed enough that she could see the boy he'd been that morning, before the trials, before the fire, before everything changed. Don't hide what you are anymore. Your mixed blood isn't a curse. Maybe it's exactly what this world needs. Someone who belongs to two kingdoms, but serves neither. Someone who can help them rebuild without the flames. Then before she could respond, before his courage could fail, before his body could give out entirely, Kyle stepped backward into the void. The fall was infinite and instant. Darkness swallowed him, but he carried light into it, 9 flames burning bright. He felt the god's essence streaming out of his body, returning to the source, gathering itself for the final rest it had craved for 3 millennia. Above in the arena, all 9 pedestals stood empty. The sacred flames, burning for 3,000 years without pause, went dark. In Dune Kar, Lord Varen Thornhelm watched his kingdom's flame die and knew his son was gone. He did not weep. Thornhelm's did not weep, but his hands shook as he removed his crown and set it on the empty throne. In every kingdom, the flames went dark. Forges cooled. Temples fell silent. Millions looked up at skies that seemed suddenly darker, colder, more vast. And in the void beneath the arena, Kel felt the god finally peacefully let go. His last thought was not of fear or regret, but of a prophecy his grandmother had whispered. When the 9th flame falls, the wanderer rises. He had wandered into darkness carrying light. Now others would have to learn to make their own. Deep in the chasm, something shifted. The body that had been Kale settled into stone, becoming part of the foundation itself, a seal that would hold for another age. But in his chest, beneath ribs turned to crystal, a single small flame still flickered. Not crimson, not gold, not any of the 9 colors. This flame burned clear as starlight, patient as stone, waiting.